Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Eric Woolfe's play Sideshow of the Damned, which I'm reading out of the Eldritch Plays collection. I really like it. It's a great October play. It's a great Halloween play. I think every play in this collection is going to be that. So Sideshow of the Damned, I think really, really fun. If you like sort of schlock, bad horror, stuff like this. It starts by capitalizing on the haunted circus theme, or the evil circus theme, however you want to express it. We have a carnival barker as the sort of narrator of this kind of episodic play. It's almost like a horror anthology series in the form of a single play, because we've got 4 different plot lines that play out. So it's introduced by this carnival barker, who is described as a hideous, lanky apparition with a bony face and top hat and malevolent leering eyes. So the carnival barker, he opens the show. He's the narrator. So we get this opening bit. Step up, ladies and gentlemen. The midway is closed for the night. The Ferris wheel has turned her last. The coasters toast. Parades have passed. The neon will no longer light. Step up, my dams and my damned ones, your gentlemen escorts as well. When the small and the big tops are dim, the darker exhibits begin. Step up to my sideshow from hell. See the axe of the poodle-headed head girl who hacked up her mother for bones. See the heads of two-headed Roddy. $2 more will show you his body. See the living dead midget who moans. And there's a footnote here that Ron Kennel, the barker in the original production, insisted on saying the living dead little person who moans. It didn't scan as well, but maybe he was right. See our rank Egyptian mummy who clawed her way out of her tomb. See Moby Mo who grew so fat, eating up children boiled in a vat. See the mirror that shows you your doom. Step up, ladies and gentlemen, step up, get in line while you can. Step up if you're brave and stout-hearted. There's no turning back once we've started. Step up for the sideshow of the damned. And it is worth noting that this is a play, and as with all sort of horror plays, plays with graphic violence, anything like this, there's a weird pragmatic limitation, right? What you can actually do in terms of showing violence on stage, showing dismemberments, showing bodily transformation, whatever it is fairly limited, right? And in the opening sort of scene description, Woolfe acknowledges this. The Creepy Quartet, that's the other 4 performers who play all of the roles other than the carnival barker. The Creepy Quartet carry a coffin from which it will pull the props necessary to make the putrid performance possible. I suppose it ought to be noted at this point that the horrors and bloodshed to follow should always be played stylistically, using half-masks, red ribbons, and imaginative solutions, instead of the more costly latex, prosthetic, and liquidy tricks utilized by the film trade. This is theater, after all, and works best if the trickery is low-tech and its mechanisms are always in full view of the audience. This, again, is a very pragmatic approach to solving the problem, because... So, I remember there was a reaction to a play. I forget which one. It was an in-your-face theater production by a British author in the 90s. I want to say it was either Sarah Kane or maybe Mark Ravenhill, but I don't remember the story specifically. And it involves a hand getting chopped off. And the hand that they use, the fake hand that they used, was clearly fake. And so rather than being, a hand has been cut off, this is very gory and shocking, the audience was like, yeah, that's a fake hand. Fake hand. Good work, guys. And there was more this sort of amusement almost than shock and horror. And in-your-face theater, to make this clear for those of you who aren't familiar with that particular stylistic genre, it was very much about shock. It was very much about putting on stage the sex and violence that the Greeks left off stage. That was sort of the guiding ethos of the whole thing. Woolfe, in part because he seems to be a puppets guy. The theater that he works for seems to do a blend of live action and puppetry, but also because it's Schlock, right? And it's proudly Schlock, this play, Sideshow of the Damned. There isn't that sort of impulse to say, this is all real believable. You don't have this sort of big budget cinematic elements that you otherwise might with something like a movie. And Woolfe embraces that, to his credit, I think. You can do scary things on stage, but the special effects are almost of necessity going to be limited in how realistic they can be. So this is Schlock that embraces itself as Schlock, and I am proud of it for doing so. Not that really matters. Woolfe probably doesn't need my approval, but nonetheless. So, like I said before, this is an episodic, sort of anthology type horror play. We have 4 plays that occur. The first one features a young woman named Maddie and her boyfriend that is going to propose to her but then breaks up with her, David. Incidentally, a lot of these names are sort of taken directly from great sort of classic horror things. So Madeline Smith, Maddie, is named for the ingenue in Hammer's Vampire Lovers and other such classics, according to a footnote. Dr. Gogol Pomeransky is the mad scientist villain in this, named for the Peter Lorre character in Mad Love, who, for the love of a Grand Guignol actress, sews murderers' hands on Colin Clive. So, I mean, it's very referential in that sense for people who have a very deep knowledge of schlock horror. But basically, Maddie lives in the same apartment building with Dr. Gogol. He's a mad scientist. He's an entomologist, so he studies bugs, particularly cockroaches. And he has this notion. So he basically uses a sort of pheromone cocktail thing to more or less seduce Maddie, but not for himself to have sex with her. He says here, every ecosystem has its own evolution, its own climax species. In the beginning, the great old ones ruled the wilderness, but they fell into deep slumber. The dinosaurs came but could not adapt. Then apes, and the apes evolved into man. Maddie says, you're cute when you talk all sciencey. Gogol says, man's time is coming to an end. Then we die, ravaged by mutant diseases. When the ecosystem has been pushed too far and can no longer sustain us, what will survive? What species will rule the world for all time to come? The cockroach. The cockroach is the climax species. Maddie says, And so basically, his plan is to use Maddie's womb without her consent, so problematic, to breed a genetically hybrid race of roach people. That's his plan. So he uses the pheromones on her to get her somewhat compliant. Then he drugs her. He impregnates her somehow with roach babies. Human roach hybrid babies. And then the end, David shows up, having been already... He's had his throat cut and his eye stabbed out by Gogol, but he's still going. David's back up. He doesn't seem to care about that. So David manages to kill Gogol. I'll back up a little bit. So Maddie had wanted to break up with David because he wanted kids and she did not. So we get to the end here. David says, Maddie, my God, Maddie, what has he done to you? Are you okay? Maddie says, David, I'm pregnant. He made me pregnant. Monsters are inside me. I'm going to be the mother of monsters. David says, don't worry, Maddie, we'll get rid of it. Maddie says, not it, David, them, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. I can feel them squirming already. Thousands of larvae in my womb, my children. David says, you can have an abortion. Now bear in mind, she was breaking up with him before because she didn't want kids. Maddie ends the scene by saying, no, David, I'm keeping them. You are right, I do want to be a mother. We're going to have a family. And so this is pretty much what the four plays are, is this sort of ironic, Locky horror nonsense, and I think it's fucking fantastic. The second story centers on this fake carnival. I'm going to say Roma because some people find the G word offensive. This fake carnival fortune teller and her a large, powerful, but fairly dim-witted lover. Her name is Etsy, or Esmeralda, and his name is Harry. They plan to kill this young couple who's coming in and steal their IDs so that they can use those IDs to get across the border after having committed previous murders. Rather than Harry brutally murdering these two young couple, these two young people, it turns out that he's a werewolf and she's a vampire, and so the couple that comes in murder Ezzy and Harry. Ironic. Then the third story, we got Jenny and Jack. They're two teenagers. Jack wants to summon the old gods. There's a lot of references to H.P. Lovecraft type stuff going on here. They partially do that. Jenny tries to back out. Jack cuts out Jenny's tongue. Then she kills him. She becomes a monk. She becomes a nun in a silent order, sort of lesbian relationship with one of the other nuns. And then Jack's dead, decaying corpse shows up, basically murders the other nun. Jenny tries to once again murder Jack. She gets murdered by another nun. And then Jack... They never got to have sex at the beginning of the play. Mary tried to tempt him away from summoning eldritch horrors with sex, and Jack refused. So now they're sort of the undead hand of Jack keeps reaching over and trying to grab Jenny's breasts, and she keeps slapping it away. So it is, again, this very sort of juvenile, nonsensical thing in this very sort of like, I don't know, you think about like, I don't know, American Pie or something like this, of like teenagers in the 60s in the backseat of cars trying to get to second base and the girl doesn't let you and whatever. This whole fucking nonsense storyline. Except they're dead. They're fucking zombies. So, yeah. And then the fourth story, the final story, is The Bottled Imp, which is basically just a sort of reworking of a Robert Louis Stevenson horror short story. This guy, his wife and best friend are cheating on him. They insult him, run off, take all his stuff, etc., etc. Then he gets this bottle with an imp that can grant him whatever wishes he wants. But if he dies when he is still in possession of the bottle, then his soul will go to hell forever and ever. In order to get rid of it, he has to sell it to someone else for less than he has paid for it. And they have to be told that these are the rules of the thing. So he pays 2 cents for it to this guy who bought it for a nickel and now just wants to get rid of it. The middle portion, he wishes for all this stuff. He wishes first off for them to suffer. So the two, his wife, they don't really get divorced. So his wife and his best friend, they end up getting eaten by sharks, basically at his wish. Then at the end of the play, he casually says, "I wish they could see me now." And the imp is like, "You got it, boss." They're like zombified pieces come in and come together, and they zombie attack him, and he wishes that he couldn't die. And so the imp grants that wish, and the two zombies tear him apart, and he's like, "Oh, fuck. I wished that I couldn't die. Now I'm going to be torn apart in pieces and still be alive forever. This sucks." So yeah, a lot of it, again, it's a combination of irony, gore, schlocky nonsense. Yeah, it's beautiful.